Hi everyone, I'm Teacher Tom. Today I would like to talk about the difference between when and while. Now, this isn't a rule, but typically we use when to introduce a short action and while to introduce a long action. For example, when using the past tense, we usually use when and then the simple past. Also, usually, we use while and then the past progressive. Let's look at an example using when. I was walking in the park when I dropped my wallet. I was walking in the park when I dropped my wallet. Okay, let's write that on the board. I was walking in the park when I dropped my wallet. Now all of this is in the past tense. First we use the past progressive. Was or were, base verb, ing. But here we use when. Okay? And usually, when introduces a short action. So, when I dropped my wallet. Okay, we're using the simple past. I dropped my wallet. Okay, this is a short action. Okay, to drop your wallet happens very quickly. It's a short action. So it's probably best to use when. When I dropped my wallet. Okay, now let's use an example using while. I dropped my wallet while I was walking in the park. Okay, now we're using while to introduce a long action. Walking in the park is a long action, right? So typically we use while to introduce a long action. And here we'll use the past progressive. Now, if we start the sentence with when or while, we'll use a comma in the sentence. For example, while I was taking a shower, the phone rang. Okay, notice we start the sentence using while. And when we do that, we must use a comma here. All right, another example. This time, let's start the sentence using when. When the timer went off, comma, I jumped. When the timer went off, ding, I jumped, right? So again, we're using when to introduce a short action. The timer went off. Simple past, okay? When the timer went off, comma, I jumped. So again, When we start the sentence with when or while, we will use a comma. Okay, let's look at a question and an answer. For example, when did you make dinner? I made dinner while you were sleeping. Again, while introduces a long action. You were sleeping, long action, right? So during the time that you were sleeping, I made dinner. Okay, now the question is, can I use when to introduce a long action? And the answer is yes. But remember, typically we use when to introduce a short action and while to introduce a long action. So when we're first learning and when we're teaching those who are first learning, we make it simple and say when introduces a short action, while introduces a long action. This is not a rule, but it's a good place to start. So could you say, I made dinner when you were sleeping? Yes, you could, but this is the preference. This is typical, using while to introduce a long action. Okay? What if we have two long actions? For example, she was building a house, long action, while we were driving to Mexico. Okay, no problem. We have a long action, and then we're using while, and another long action. Now, what about if we have two short actions? Again, no problem. Look. He shouted when he saw a big cat. Wow, that's a big cat. Okay, he shouted, short action, when introducing a short action. When he saw a big cat. Again, simple past, shouted, simple past, saw, right? See is an irregular verb. See, saw. We can also switch the clauses of the sentence. For example, we can start with when. When the phone rang, comma, I was exercising. So, when we start the sentence with when, we will use a comma. But the other way, we don't need a comma. For example, I was exercising when the phone rang. No comma. Okay, the same applies when we start a sentence with while, right? For example, while Susie was watching a movie, comma, I went home. Okay, let's switch the clauses. I went home while Susie was watching a movie. No comma. So again, when we start the sentence with when or while, we will use a comma. When we switch the clauses the other way, we don't use a comma. Understand? Okay, here's something to help explain. When means at that time. While, or in this context, as, means during that time. Remember, I told you that usually we use when to introduce a short action and while to introduce a long action. But that's not a rule. However, let's learn it that way first. Then later, we can make exceptions. But for now, for this lesson, when introduces a short action and while introduces a long action. Okay? So with that in mind, let's practice. I shut the door, blank, you called my name. So you're going to tell me, is it when or while? Okay, can you tell me the answer? Is it when or while? I shut the door when you called my name. Okay, when is introducing a short action here, right? Simple past. Okay, let's try another one. What do you think? She called the doctor blank. He was riding his bike. What goes here? Is it when or while? Okay, did you get it? She called the doctor while he was riding his bike. Okay, so while is going to introduce a long action. Was riding his bike. Past progressive. Let's try this example. What were you doing? Blank. I was out working all day long. What goes here? Is it when or while? Did you get it? What were you doing while I was out working all day long, right? While, again, introduces a long action, past progressive, was out working, ing, right? Okay, good. Let's try one more. What do you think? When or while? Blank, they were young, comma, they ran 9 miles a day. Is it when or while? It could be either, right? So it depends on your perspective. Do we mean at that time or during that time? In this case, it could be either. They were young. Do we think about that as a short time or for a long time? It's a matter of perspective. In this example, we could use when they were young, or while they were young. Now, the feeling is a little different, but grammatically, both are correct, because when means at that time, right? Or at the time when they were young. And while means during that time, or during the time that they were young. Okay, so in this example, both are correct. Also, it does come down to a matter of philosophy, right? Grammar can change according to how we perceive it. Remember, in English, there are many exceptions, and sometimes the rules aren't so strict. Let's do a little practice. You tell me, comma or no comma. Understand? Let's look at the sentence. When I got the job, I cried. Comma or no comma? Comma. Because we're starting the sentence with when. When I got the job, comma, I cried. Hopefully, tears of joy. Let's look at another sentence. Tell me, comma or no comma? Bailey ordered pizza when she heard the news. Comma or no comma? Bailey ordered pizza, no comma, when she heard the news. We don't need a comma here, and we don't use a comma here because we're not starting the sentence with when or while.